Thank you for joining us in our wellness chats. I want to thank all our subscribers and viewers for your support to our channel. We're very grateful that you're here and that you like our content. So please continue to show us your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing our videos. Today, we have with us our financial wellness expert, David Shirk, who's joining us to talk about financial wellness. Financial wellness for women, as we all know, David, has been a topic of discussion for many years in many boardrooms. And progress has been made, but there's a trail that still is left to blaze. And we know that we have a lot of data that is telling us that women make less money than men, but they also live longer than men and therefore are left to fund their long lives with less wealth. But it's not only making less money that is an issue here. There's also lack of confidence with women and money, especially investing, and the taboo around talking about money that adds to this lack of confidence that women have with money. Now, with saying all of that, David, I'd like to welcome you to our wellness chat. And it's such a pleasure having you on. David is also an amazing author. And with that, let me just ask you, what is financial wellness and what are steps that women can take to build a financial wellness plan?
Sure. And thank you so much for having me here. This is great. The basic premise behind forming a financial wellness plan is both to give you confidence and to empower you so that you don't feel that you're constantly chasing after where your money is or how you're making money or feeling financially unstable, right? Getting rid of all of that can bring so much empowerment into your life. I like to think of financial wellness. I like to always break things down into different components. So I like to think of financial wellness as being comprised of 4 different sort of pillars or components. One are your regular investments, right? These are things that you have outside that are working to help you. The second pillar are what I call later life resources, because most of us, they used to call them retirement resources. And I don't like using that word because a lot of us don't want to stop doing the things that we love to do, which could also be bringing money into us. So I like to think of them as later life resources in terms of resources that we're going to have specifically designated for the period of our time where we're going to maybe not be working as much, where we're a little bit older, right? Then we have our debt control, because that's an important part of financial wellness, because that can counter the investments that you have and controlling your debt and the various kinds of debt. And finally, what I label as protection, which usually takes the form of different kinds of insurance to make sure that all of the work we're doing to build our financial wellness plan doesn't get taken away from us because of some catastrophic event. So by breaking it into those 4 categories, it makes it a little bit more manageable for people to sort of look at something they can do within each of those separate categories. Another image that I like to use is when you're creating your financial wellness plan is to think of it as building a mosaic. So you see the big picture available to you, right? Which includes these 4 elements. And then you will decide which particular tile that you're going to put in at any given moment. And you're going to continue to build this beautiful financial wellness mosaic for yourself.
Interesting. I think breaking it down, it becomes more digestible. It's more realistic. It feels more attainable. So I really like that. And talk to us, David, what are the components of a core portfolio and how does your emergency cash stash fit into that? And what are some ways that a woman is able to build into it?
Sure. So I like to think of this core portfolio as being sort of the centerpiece of both your regular investment silo as well as your later life silo, right? And that consists of 3 components, going from the least risky to the most risky. The least risky is the cash component. And what makes cash the least risky is because it's incredibly stable. It basically is the concept of $1 equals $1. Right? If you put $100 into a bank, you go back a year later, they're going to give you $100 back. There's no fluctuation of the actual currency on the market. Not looking at it from outside currencies and not looking at it in terms of inflation, right? The purpose of cash in this core portfolio is to be the ballast of your ship, right? It doesn't fluctuate. So it's really there for your protection so that you can take some risk with the other two types of assets that make up the core portfolio. A big part of the cash component is that it makes up what I call your emergency cash stash. And that is once you know about how much money it takes to get you through any given month, I call that your monthly nut, right? You want to be sure that you have enough nuts stored in your cash stash to protect you if you don't have money coming in at any given time, right? And there's various schools of thought on that, whether you can have anywhere from 4 to 6 months if you tend to work steadily. You want to increase it if you tend to have freelance work or your work is a little less consistent. So you could maybe have up to 10 months of this emergency cash stash. Now that can feel a little overwhelming, right? Because if you think about, okay, how much do I need to get me through a month? And if I have to have 6 to 10 months of that in the bank, that's a lot. So do you have to have that tomorrow? No, it's something that you can build slowly over time. You're also going to be building the other two assets I'm going to be talking about at the same time so that you can get more bang for your buck from them, right? So a couple good strategies are, one, set up an auto transfer of money from the account that you typically use all the time into a savings account or something, that you don't really look at all that much. And even if it's just like $10 a month that you start automatically transferring into it, over time, that really starts to build into this emergency cash stash for yourself. Another way of looking at it is, instead of looking at your entire monthly nut, maybe pick out a piece of your monthly nut and say, okay, my rent or my mortgage payment is X amount of dollars included in my monthly nut. Let me try to save up 6 of those in my emergency cash stash. Once I have my 6 months of my rent or my mortgage payment, then let me start looking at my electric and my utility bills, and let me get 6 months of those. So you save the monthly nut in pieces. Anything that you can do to help automate it and not feel really pressured by that saving is going to help you. The next level up from cash that's a little bit more risky are bonds. Premise of bonds are they're a loan. You're basically loaning money to an institution or an entity. They're agreeing to pay it back to you after a certain period of time, and they're agreeing to pay you interest. Bonds are also known as fixed income because they have these regular interest payments on them. So those can be those would be more risky to get involved in terms of investing than cash, but not as risky as the top tier, which is stock. Stock represents ownership in a company. Stock fluctuates constantly on the market, the price of the stock, which is what makes it really risky. But it also means that you have the most likely ability to get a better return from stock over the long haul, in the long term, right? Because you're an owner in a company, as a stockholder, if the company distributes profits, they distribute those out to you in the form of something called a dividend. So the dividends can certainly play a big part in the stock ownership of your portfolio. So those three components, cash being the ballast, bonds being a little more risky, but a little more bang for your buck, and stock being the most risky, but the most potential bang for your buck, are what I consider to be the components of your core portfolio.
Interesting. And David, you've talked about all these investment vehicles. So tell me, why are these investment assets crucial to our financial well-being?
So if you think about what kind of interest rate you're getting on your cash right now in your bank, it probably is really crappy, right? You're not getting very much from it. And we also happen to be in a very high inflation time, right? Where inflation is accelerating. So your cash is actually, your buying power of your cash isn't keeping up with inflation. And again, that's not the purpose of cash. The purpose of cash is to be there for emergencies and for your ballast of your ship. These other kinds of investments, your bond investments, your stock investments, actually tend to, over time, outpace inflation. So in that way, they're going to ensure that your wealth can continue to grow um, and keep ahead of inflation so that your cash can just sit there and be boring and available to you in case of emergencies.
Interesting. And we also talk about financial literacy being a big factor in women being able to save and invest and do all of those things. How does financial literacy tie into this ever increasing wealth gap, David?
Well, I personally feel that I have not experienced any place in the world that actually has a good financial literacy education program for its population. For whatever reason, it's something that just is never talked about. In many times, we're almost shamed into not being wanting to talk about it. So, because we don't have that comfort of understanding investments, we can never take advantage of them, right?
Mm.
I like to I like to tell people, think of your investments, meaning your bond and your stock investments, as being like your employees, right? It's not You're not throwing money into this big scary cave that you're not sure if it's ever going to come back at you. They're these employees that are working for you 24/7. You never have to listen to them complain. You don't have to feed them. You don't have to give them vacation. They just sit there and they chug away for you. And if we can start changing how we think about them into a positive way like that, it suddenly becomes less scary and it becomes something that we are willing to learn more about. Another key element of financial literacy, for me at least, is some people feel like, okay, I can't do anything with investing until I understand absolutely everything there is to understand about it. And that's a big mistake because you do learn a lot in the doing of it, right? So as you start, the important thing is to find ways that you can start that are you're going to be comfortable with the level of risk that you're taking, right? I'm a big baby when it comes to getting into a swimming pool. I could literally take a half an hour to get into the pool. I do like an inch at a time, getting a little bit deeper. Some people can jump into the deep end and are totally fine with that. Think about how you feel in terms of investing. And there's nothing wrong with being the baby like me that wades in over a half an hour, right? But understand that you will learn as you do. And then it will inform you about what you need to learn more about.
Hmm. Hmm. And in your work so far, David, do you think that have you found that women face different challenges than men when they're building towards this financial wellness?
I do, and I think what's interesting to me is in the classes that I teach, a
Mm.
large percentage of them are women, and I
Mm.
was always interested by that. I think that there has historically, I'm in the United States. I know the same is true in Canada, the UK, many of the other countries. There is a bias against women understanding finances.
Mhm.
It was always kind of the men's thing to do, and most of the
Mhm.
information was geared towards men,
Mhm.
and towards higher risk behavior. And I think that at times can be a big turnoff for women because they've been led to believe, or there's this misconception that investing in the market is incredibly risky, and it doesn't have to be. So I think there has been a bias there, and it's important that that be overcome because women are on their own. They're more than capable of understanding what the investing is all about and building their own financial wellness plan. Even if you end up being partnered, whether it's with a man, a woman, whoever, there is still a lot of financial independence that comes with that, right? Because people are becoming more self-sufficient and more independent. And I think that unfortunately, women have to overcome that bias a little bit, but fortunately, they are more than capable of doing that, and there is more information available to them to help them do so.
Mhm. 100%. And I think you answered that beautifully, David. I was reading an article where they say that studies are showing that women are confident, equally confident as men in most financial tasks. For example, the 90% of women are confident paying bills, but only half, so 52% of women say they're confident in managing investment.
Mhm.
And I think that you make a really good point that we just have to start learning, getting comfortable with this. And I'd urge all our viewers that David David. David Sharp is a financial wellness expert who sits on our wellness platform. So please do reach out to him. He is more than happy to help you, and his sessions are amazing. And thank you to all our viewers for joining us today. Thank you so much, David, for taking out time from your busy schedule and joining us and providing us such wonderful insights. And we look forward to connecting with you more and bringing you more episodes. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.